5.5 minutes to go until the beginning of the 26th season of the Allflattious iGP Championship. We missed broadcasting the final 3 rounds of last season, in which Alain Prost was pretty dominant, wrapping up his 3rd championship before retiring. And soon after his retirement, he announced he'd be joining the Ligier management team, although it was looking like for a moment this morning that McLaren might recall him to drive one of their cars, because rather tragically we lost Stefan Beloff, who was meant to be driving for Tyrrell this season. As a result of which, Jody Scheckter and McLaren elected that it was only right and in the interest of the team for Scheckter to remain with the Tyrrell team for what will be his 7th season with them, and continue to lead that outfit, which left McLaren scrambling around for a last-minute replacement. They couldn't really get any of their first choices, who were all under contract or too difficult to get out at such short notice, so they settled on Michael Andretti, a 2-time IndyCar champion, and has 36 career wins to his name, the son of Mario. So, let's have a look at the grid. Alfa Romeo have, of course, withdrawn, so that we will not be seeing the second Marlboro-coloured cars today. It is a pole position for Chris Amon, I believe the second of his career, following on from France last season, where he finished 10th in the wet. Dan Gurney will be very disappointed, given he is looking to get the outright pole record, so he'll be very upset to have been edged out by Eamon, as those two men really are both fighting for their careers. They were lucky to be able to stay on for this season. So, third on the grid, the returning Keke Rosberg. After 2 seasons away, having been dropped by McLaren, the new Williams team, which has replaced Alfa Romeo, has signed the Finnish driver, runner-up in season 24, and he goes from 3rd on the grid in his return, just ahead of Mario Andretti, who's returned to Lotus. He's the championship favourite for this season, and the top 5 is completed by Patrick Depay's Tyrrell. Nigel Mansell goes from 6th on his AIC debut. As a result of Beloff's unfortunate demise, the only rookie, the only star graduate this season is Nigel Mansell, and he will be looking to make good on his promise, and he goes from 6th on the grid. Rolf Stomlin, the season 24 champion, goes from 7th on his RWB debut, greatly outperforming Jackie X. Jean-Pierre Jabouille, rather surprisingly, ahead of Jean-Pierre Jarier. Jarier has moved over from Lotus after 6 seasons to Ligier. Top 10 rounded out by the second Tyrrell of Jody Scheckter, and the medium runners completed by Carlos Reutemann, well behind Andretti, and Jackie X, well behind Rolf Stomlin. So, 4 teams have opted for hard tyres. Surprisingly, at the head of the queue is Mauro Baldi's Arrows, ahead of Eddie Cheever. Many expected Cheever to be the Arrows who would be leading the charge, but it's Baldi, and they're well up on the grid. Usually we see Arrows locking out the back row, but today they are running from the 7th row. Another surprise, Michael Andretti, with barely any time. I think he has one single practice lap this morning, has put it 15th on the grid, just ahead of Jochen Rindt, the outcast from Tyrrell, who's moved to Aston Martin, displacing Gonzalo Rodriguez. Then Ronnie Peterson, 17th, the man who McLaren will now have to be relying on to win them the championship, because Andretti is not really expected to complete the season, depending on how other developments go. Jean-Pierre Beltois, a winner and the multiple podium finisher last season, 18th on the grid, but he knows how to come forward. And rather surprisingly, the back row goes to the Brabham team, who were very much the fastest team in practice. Alessandro Nannini and Carlos Pache, the home hero. Pache fast in practice, last in qualifying. He'll be very disappointed. We've had a few changes this season in terms of engine suppliers. We've had Alfa Romeo withdrawing, which has meant RWB are now using Porsche engines. And we've also had Ford re-enter the sport as a supplier to Williams. Aside from that, there aren't really any changes. Though, of course, Matra re-entering the sport as well in supply with Ligier, but those are the only supply changes. But at the moment, it really is all to play for. Andretti seems to be the favourite for the championship based on what many people think, although lots of people would say it's Peterson. Scheckter staying at Tyrrell rather than McLaren. Will that continuity and a stronger Tyrrell allow him to thrive? But we're off the start, and it looks like someone's got a good jump, and it's Rosberg. Eamon with an appalling start from the pole. So Gurney leads. Extremely poor start from Chris Eamon. I think it's going to put Gurney into the lead from Rosberg, from Mansell, from Andretti. Eamon fighting back past Rolf Stommelen. In the middle of the pack, it's Michael Andretti, who's carved his way into the top 10. Eamon struggling, but getting back up into 6th. A very weird first lap from Chris Eamon, but the Williams cars, very, very strong. And up into 2nd and 3rd behind Dan Gurney. And at the back, still Carlos Pacinini's moved forward. Ix has fallen back. Beltois with a brilliant first lap. But a bit of a split in the field as the Tyrrells have dropped back as well, actually. Depay fighting Andretti for the final points position. And they're really romping away at the front. The top 4, no, the top 3 it is, who are really romping away at the front. Gurney, though, holds the lead. Aim with a truly shocking start, I must say. Andretti now behind Reutemann, so that's probably not what he would have hoped for, but there's a long way to go in this race. I did think Ligier, based on their tyre troubles in the back end of last season, would have opted for the hard compound today, but they started on the mediums as Peterson passes Beltois. Beltois slipped back. It's not looking good for Aston Martin. I think they were being a bit conservative on fuel, which may prove to be a mistake as the race runs on. Michael Andretti really struggling, and Scheckter gets past him now. I think that's both Tyrrells on the boost trying to get up as far as possible, and yes, that is exactly what they've done. So Andretti now right behind Rolf Stommelen. RWB enjoyed a very strong season last season, but that was possibly due to a significant advantage in the design department that they are never going to have again. So they are really going to be slipping towards the back as the season goes on. And I have to say, Depay's found his way into the lead. It is his favourite circuit. I think that's probably a pretty smart thing to have done. He was down and out the points battling with Andretti, but he's just really cleared his way up into the clean air. And now he leads from Jarry. Jarry often has gone very well in Brazil. In the South American races, he seems to be a bit special here, but second at the moment, Jabouille in 8th. It's looking all right for Ligier, but it might slightly change as things go on. Ferrari are not in the sort of position they would have wanted to be. They'd have been hoping to romp away into the distance from that front row, but they've really just fallen back into the pack as Depay leads from Rosberg, Mansell, Jarry. Depay really, on his Tyrrell debut, doing a fantastic job. His old teammate, Rolf Stommelen, is down in 12th position. So it's not quite what... different fortunes, let's say, for the two Alfa Romeo drivers. Although Stommelen at least has a championship to his credit. So far, anyway. All over the back of Stommelen now is Michael Andretti. I think Baldi's having a look at Peterson. Peterson, of course, the defending winner here. He won superbly and dominantly last season, as I think that's out of the point Jean-Pierre Jabouille with Eddie Cheever coming forward on his Arrows debut. Cheever, could he get points for Arrows on his debut here? That would be a pretty big blow for Mauro Baldi. A lot of people rate Mauro Baldi very highly. I can't say I'm one of them. I think he's rather mediocre, who's just occasionally does well in a good car against a poor teammate. But let's see, Cheever up into 10th, the top hard runner. 3 places ahead of Andretti and Peterson, the next hard runners, as they are struggling to clear Rolf Stommelen's RWB Porsche. It's the same engine, branded tag in the McLaren and branded Porsche in the RWB. And here they go. Here goes Andretti. He's going to pass Stomlin, and Peterson's going to try and pass the German, but not quite. Struggling to do it. It's still up at the front. It's Depay, Rosberg, Mansell, Jarry, Gurney, and Andretti, who are all sort of running away. And further back, Scheckter is in a little group with Reutemann, although he's a bit ahead of Reutemann. And then it's Eamon, who's fallen back behind Reutemann. Jabouille clinging onto the top 10 with Cheever. And the two McLarens doing their best to hold on to that group. I don't think they're necessarily all going to have DRS here, but Andretti's put in no, Andretti hasn't put in a good enough sector. I'm not sure McLaren will mind that, because Peterson really, I think, is the driver who they want to have ahead in this situation. I think we've got a pretty good attendance. We've got 8 out of 10. I think we are missing Ferrari and Brabham are the two teams who are being missed, and that might be why Nannini's so far back. It's a bit disappointing to see Aston Martin not making progress, as here comes on the boost Alessandro Nannini, who is going to sit right behind the two McLarens. And here comes Andretti passing Peterson. Nannini trying to slip through, but he's not quite able to do it. And now he does it. At the front, it's still Depay, Jarry, Mansell, Gurney, Rosberg, Andretti, Scheckter, and Reutemann. The top 8 not really changing. Rosberg starting to slip back now, actually, and Andretti goes ahead of him. I wonder if they got a bit of tyre temperature issues on that Williams, pushing too hard early in the race, as I think that is Cheever, who's trying to get away from the two McLarens. And Andretti's boosted but not got DRS, so that's a bit silly from him. But it's put Peterson ahead of Nannini. But really, the hard tyre runners are not really coming into their own. And maybe they will in a few laps. But Cheever is the top one. He needs to probably work together with the McLarens. And Baldi's come through as well. Nannini's there. Not going well for Gurney, who's just pitted. The first man in. And Ix and Stomlin really struggling. Yes, Rolf Stomlin, who is perhaps widely considered to be one of the worst drivers ever to win the championship in the AIC. He now has a chance to sort of rehabilitate his image, but he's not doing a particularly good job as of yet. And Rosberg really struggling now. Rosberg's down to 9th, and Mansell as well, struggling as well. So the Williamses are falling back. I suspect that's overheating tyres. I suspect the cause of Williams' plight is the fact that their tyres are overheating, because one would expect them to be running much further up. Their car qualified well. It's clearly very quick. But is Rosberg going to pull in or not? He doesn't pull in, but he's going extraordinarily slowly. He's seconds a lap off the pace. That's extraordinary. The one thing I actually have not checked is with the changes is if boost still recharges. So I'll have to tell you at the end of the current lap, when we start lap 13, what the case is. Anyway, Jarry leads Depay, and it's Andretti, then Reutemann, and Jabouille is still just about in it, though he's being caught by Cheever, who's going after him. Mansell's very slow, and Andretti's going to be in a bit of a pickle here, because he's going to try and not pass the Englishman. Can he manage to stick behind just enough? And he can, as Baldi left behind. So Williams, it's all starting to go wrong. I can only assume Williams have cooked their tyres. But anyway, Depay leads Jarry. Depay, of course, came second here last year. It's his favourite circuit. So that's something as to why he's got an advantage. It goes the same way for Andretti. Also his favourite circuit. But Depay now pits from the lead, trying to maintain that advantage. I presume he'll go to hard tyres, and he does, which means he can definitely make it to the end of the race from this point onwards. As yes, the boost is regenerating as Nigel Mansell passes Mauro Baldi. But Keke Rosberg absolutely nowhere, down into 16th place. Both Tyrrells have now pitted along with both Ferraris. They're at the back of the pack, but the pace at which Williams have dropped off the face of the earth is really quite astonishing. And rather disappointing, I think, as Beltois now passes Mansell. So Beltois starting to come to the fore. The man who finished 7th in the championship last season and really did fantastically with a breakthrough win, although he was not all as consistent as perhaps he might have been. Jochen Rindt moves into the top 10, battling Mansell. I mean, you've got to, if your tyres are that bad, Williams have got to call them in. I'm really confused as to what's going on with Williams because they've lost a pit stop effectively to, a lot of drivers. I find that very confusing as to why that aspect of race execution seems to have gone so poorly. Eddie Cheever now is on the back of Carlos Reutemann. And I think Reutemann will probably pit, and he does. Jabouille also pits. So Andretti, who is the leading McLaren, still having out-qualified Peterson to the surprise of many. I know that the McLaren team have long had their eye on Mario Andretti, but he is at Lotus. So they can't have him at the moment. But I know that he is a driver who they desire. And the question now for McLaren is what do they do? As Eddie Cheever goes to lead because Jarre has pit. And Peterson goes past Eddie Cheever into the leader. He's used a lot of boost, which Cheever has not. So really, Cheever's in a pretty good position. Rint's still yet to stop. I'm not sure why Cheever's using his boost now, because it's really a bit ineffectual in the current situation. But he's trying it. He's still trying it. We've got a spread of mediums and hard tyres. Stommel and Mansell both in the top 10 yet to pit. I'm very confused by what's gone wrong with the strategy for Williams. But there we are. One can't have all the answers to everything. As they all rejoin Andretti and Cheever and Jabouille there. And Peterson. I think Peterson's the one who's lost out there because he's at the back of the queue. And there's Mansell. Mansell's still running. I'm not sure why Williams have not called their cars into the pits. Rosberg is pretty much stone dead last. It's clearly a very quick car from where it qualified. And I'm a bit perplexed as to what that situation is, what's going on. Is it a fundamental misunderstanding of the tyres? That's a possibility. But anyway, Cheever passes Jabouille on his younger tyres, younger by 2 laps. Andretti with younger tyres by 1 lap. Peterson with younger tyres by 2 laps. Eddie Cheever putting in a pretty fantastic performance, but Gurney's found himself in the front again. So it's very interesting to see how this is going to play out, because we've got top 11. I think the top 11 are probably the relevant cars, although I wouldn't count out Jean-Pierre Beltois, who is just outside the top 10, especially with the sort of odd strategy that we're seeing from certain teams like Ferrari, although Gurney seems to be almost safe, but not quite. And I think they're going to catch Gurney pretty quickly. I don't think it's going to work for Ferrari in the way that it worked last season, because Mario Andretti very nearly won the race last season. So, Cheever starting to gap the McLarens. Cheever is in a pretty super... And he's gapped Andretti. So Eddie Cheever pulling away as he catches Jody Scheckter. Scheckter, the man who should have been in McLaren, so he's probably not quite as accustomed to that Tyrrell as he would hope to be. And, of course, the whole Tyrrell team affected by the loss of Stefan Beloff. But Patrick Depay hoping to bring home a victory in honour of the man who should have been his teammate today. But we've got a nice bit of field spread all the way back to the Williamses, who have pitted way too late. I'm perplexed, and I will be interested to speak to the team after the race to see exactly what was going on inside their heads. But yeah, Beltoir can't really close because he's got no one to work with, as that's a shame for him, but you can't have everything. But he might salvage a point when the Ferrari strategy wheels come off, or if Jabouille, you know, starts to fade. But let's see. Beltoir in the middle sector, personal best, and he is closing pretty quickly on the cars ahead, I have to say, but it's not going to be quick enough because they're about to have a massive DRS train off the back of Chris Amon. And Beltoir's trying to get there, but he doesn't get there. He's not quite got there. He'll have to try again, whether he wants to risk. I think, in my view, he absolutely has to do it, as Gurney and Amon decide they're going to use their boost. Amon moving up in the world. And yes, Scheckter holding up the cars behind, I think, here, because he pitted very early for the first time. But he's going to have a nice little DRS off Chris Amon. So it doesn't really matter. And here's Beltoir. So Beltoir's decided, yeah, he wants to get in the points. And Scheckter, don't think, did get DRS off Amon there. So he's been passed by Cheever and passed by Jabouille. And Cheever really needs to get past both of these cars. And if he can manage to do that, he'll be in a pretty fantastic position. Peterson now passes Scheckter, his former teammate and the man who should have been his teammate today. But anyway, Peterson up behind Cheever. Cheever and Jabouille and Peterson all together now. Now, Cheever doesn't have DRS off Jabouille. That's not a smart thing to do at all, Eddie, because you're going to sit behind Peterson if you don't boost, and then you'll just get DRS the next lap. And you'll get ahead, but now he's wasting his boost, and it's not putting him in a particularly good position. I mean, Depay, Andretti, Jarry have been absolutely phenomenal today, and Reutemann's done a superb job as well. I have to say, they've done a fantastic job, all of them. And Cheever's making sure that he will be within DRS, as Beltoir is dropped from DRS by Michael Andretti, unintentionally, might I add, but I'm sure that will not at all go down well with the Aston Martin team. And it doesn't. So, Jabouille, looking a bit slow. Peterson clears him to go after Eddie Cheever. Cheever and Peterson need to really be working together here, because they could possibly pull off something quite impressive. As Scheckter really drops back. Peterson doesn't get DRS. So that's a huge, huge miscalculation by Peterson. Pretty big error of judgment. And it might cost them later on. They're only 7 seconds off the back of this group. As Nannini now comes into the top 10. Past Scheckter. It's really gone wrong for Scheckter. I wonder if he might retire at the end of the season. Maybe it's a bit early to be making statements like that, but it really does seem as though he doesn't have the will to fight that we've seen from him in the past. As bad news for Jabboy. He's going to lose 3 positions, and it's going to put the McLarens right on the back of Eddie Cheever. Eddie Cheever, coincidentally, was a driver who was high on McLaren's list to replace Scheckter when they got the news this morning that Stefan Beloff had been killed and that they needed a new driver because Scheckter would be remaining at Tyrrell. But hasn't quite worked. And Cheever is just fantastically quick. I mean, there's no two ways about it. They can't keep up with him. He is just fantastically quick. He cannot be caught. I really hope he's not under-fueled, because that would be absolutely tragic. But as Andretti loses out to Peterson, what can Peterson do? Because Peterson's on the same age tyres as Cheever. One would presume that the McLaren's a quicker car. They've got slightly different characteristics. The McLaren and the Arrows, in terms of both their general design and the effect of the engine. It seems as though Depay started to drop back. I wonder if he's going to come into the pits. He's not. But that might be a struggle for him later on. As once again, Beltois is left behind. Patrick Depay, these guys who started on the hards. And I don't know what Cheever's trying to do. He's trying to work with and I think they'll have DRS here. They don't have DRS here. That's probably a pretty big missed opportunity by Peter not to have boosted to get past Depay. Because I think Depay will struggle, or Cheever will struggle more than Peterson would when it comes to passing Patrick Depay. Going after the Lotus, Reutemann's recovered well. He had a very poor start, but he's moved back up into a very strong position. I think it's an almost certainty that Depay is going to be on this lap, which means it's an even bigger shame that the mistake was made and he's not in. Okay. So they are running, and they are continuing to run. Jarre winning for Ligier here would be truly magnificent, and it looks like he might manage it. The Matra engine that Ligier switched to could well bring its first ever win, I believe, because I don't think it ever won for RWB or Ligier or Aston Martin. No, it almost certainly didn't, because by the time RWB did win that race back in season 22, it was powered by an Alfa Romeo engine. So, this could be Eddie Cheever's day of days. It could be Ronnie Peterson's day of days, or even more surprisingly, it could be Michael Andretti's day of days. Which would be certainly a shock to the system. As I feel as though, actually, I was being a bit harsh on Scheckter earlier, because looking at the way that Depay is not reacting to the cars around him, it seems to me as though that Tyrrell are now MIA when it comes to the... for suggesting that they are MIA, but just the way that we know they are a fantastic, forceful team and the way that they perform, it seems a bit odd that they are struggling so much at the moment. And it's going to be in pit stop. 35 laps to go. And this might cause some problems, but we'll see. With the tyre economies that people have, I think it might be a real struggle, actually, for a lot of the guys who started on medium tyres to make it to the end on 3 stops. Because it's looking like a struggle with the guys who started on hard tyres to make it to the end on 3 stops. It's borderline with the wear rate. So I am wondering if we actually might be seeing something extremely odd. But let's see how it goes. As Peterson takes the lead and is pulling away. As Andretti is now behind Beltois, but still ahead of Depay. Jabou's fallen back. Williams have clearly made significant strategic errors, because I think Williams clearly, in the first part of the race had a very fundamentally fast motor vehicle, and it's not really worked out for them, to be honest. As Andretti passes Beltois, Peterson, Cheever, Depay, Jabou, Schechter's down in 18th. This is a shocking performance from the double world champion. Who is, I believe, the second. Now, Prost is retired. I believe he's now the second most successful driver on the grid after Dan Gurney, who is in second position. The American. He didn't get pole. I think he'd be very disappointed because he said he wants the pole record and then he wants to retire. And it looks as though he's not going to be getting the pole record because Eamon's out-qualified him. So, we've got two groups. Beltois, who's brought himself in pretty nicely with Andretti, the first McLaren, as Depay moves ahead of Peterson. I wonder if that's just an attempt to block him, because I don't think that was necessarily the smartest thing to do. I don't think anyone's going to have any fuel issues. As Beltois and co are catching the Ferrari of Chris Eamon, and they should get DRS here. And Depay does not get DRS, which is going to allow Peterson back ahead of him. Just as a sort of mistake that Peter... And yeah, I think Depay is just trying to block Peterson here. Something seems straight. Or he just wants the clean air. And he knows that the boost will come back. So... And he triggered Gurney into dumping Gurney's boost. So that's quite funny. But I don't suspect the Ferraris will score. I don't suspect... I think if Nannini can pull off a point, I think that would be pretty fantastic. Cheever doesn't get it off Beltois. So Andretti gets through. This is a pretty important little group. I think Eamon will be interesting, to say the least. But at the back of the field is sadly Keke Rosberg on his return. I mean, they're just running stints that are too long, is the thing. So I have to have a word with Williams, because they're running stints that are too long, basically. I'm not sure exactly what Cheever hoped to gain from that, apart from dropping Ronnie Peterson. So maybe that was a clever move from the American on his Arrows debut. Mauro Baldi down in 15th, not doing a bad job as things go. Andretti with Depay back in the top four. It's been very much that top four all race. Jarry, Andretti, Reutemann and Depay. That's very much been the top four for the whole race. And here comes Jabouis trying to get back into things. And all he's done is given Nannini a nice bit of DRS. So Ferrari further down. But still, they've got Mansell, they've got Stommel. Williams are going to have to take a serious conference to understand why their strategies have been exceedingly poor. Because that was a very quick car earlier in the race, and it looked as though it had the pace to be in the top five. I'm not sure what all the excessive kind of boosting that is happening from Cheever is, because I don't think it's really necessary in the grand scheme of things. And here comes Nannini up into 8th. So, great performance from the Italian. So, we now need to start seeing in the next 10 laps these guys closing in on the cars that are ahead of them, because they did start to close in, then they lost a lot of time. And they got to try and close. That's just great because Peterson just dumped loads of boost, which he was absolutely not asked to do. So pressed it once and then it just stayed locked on and dumped all of the boost. So that's not ideal, and that's going to compromise Ronnie Peterson's race. The man who is now really the only person who might win the title for McLaren this season. And now they're starting to catch Depay again, who's got no boost left. Scheckter is 12th, but also has no boost left. So I wonder if Tyrrell have checked out effectively, but for staying in the server so that the broadcast can continue. Cheever in 5th. Looks as though he might be able to get 4th, but then he's got cars behind him with a lot more boost. So I wonder if 8th may be the realistic target for the man from Phoenix. Jabwi looking like he's going to be in the points. But Cheever is just extraordinary once he gets into clean air. I mean, I don't really know what to say. He is absolutely fantastic once you get him into clean air. He has fantastic pace. And I don't really think that Andretti has the talent to compete with that. So starting to close up on Depay. And Peterson is going to have to boost. They're going to have to boost to get up to the back of Eddie Cheever. And it's split the group a little bit. And they're catching Depay. And this is playing into the hands, I think, of Beltoir more than anyone. As Jarre at the front is being caught by Reutemann. He's got the boost advantage, having been let go by Lotus to win Ligier's first race on his debut would be an exceptional performance from the French. Is that the Williams being lapped of Keke Rosberg? I think it is, which is exactly not what Williams would have wanted to see on their return. But I think it really comes down to a few things, which I think is mostly going to be to do with tyres. I think Beltoir's got older tyres actually than Andretti, so he probably isn't being held up particularly. And here is where it starts to come in. Reutemann is the one leading the charge here. It's not Andretti as expected. It's Reutemann who is the leading Lotus driver. As Peterson now on the back of Shiva. They've got to work together. They've got to not waste boost. And Nannini's still in this group, I think, but not quite. As Peterson gets ahead, he's going to have to get Depay, and then he's going to have to get Andretti. And I think Peterson could end up on the podium here, but it's going to probably be a 1-2 for Jarre and for Reutemann. But yes, the two rookies, because of course Michael Andretti is a rookie. We was meant to be having Stefan Beloff and Nigel Mansell. I don't think Mansell has actually done a bad job in the grand scheme of things, but it's certainly interesting as Cheever goes ahead of Peterson again. They swap with DRS. They're going to catch Depay. I think Depay will hold on to some points because I don't think Rindt is going to be able to find 10 seconds. I don't think Rindt's going to be able to find 10 seconds. But yeah, Cheever is catching Depay. And Peterson is catching Cheever. Can we see Cheever in the top 5 today? I hope so. They're going to have DRS, especially if Cheever uses a little bit of boost. I don't think he is. And Depay does. Okay, so Tyrrell are still around because they've used their boost there to try and stave off the threat from behind. And we're looking at tyres which can probably run 2 more laps. I mean, the earliest you want to make your final stop is lap 51. That is the earliest you want to make your final stop. As here comes Peterson and Cheever. And Andretti is Beltoir's pit. I think Beltoir's gone too early for his final stop. I think that's going to hurt him at the end of the race. So Mansell switching to medium tyres. I think that's just too long on a stint. The tyre wear is worse than expected. As Cheever goes past Depay, and Depay's next victim, or the person who will next take Depay, is Michael Andretti, the debutant, who will be in this lap for his final stop in his first IGP. So Jackie X exits the pits. Cheever, really, if he was smart, would probably try and get in the DRS of Peterson. But no, Cheever pits. So Peterson may have some work cut out. Yeah, the tyre wear seemed to be worse, I think, than was expected. As Jarier is very close to Peterson, even though he's made an extra stop. Beltoir with a huge undercut, so the undercut is pretty substantial in its effect. And Andretti's been shunted down behind Depay, behind Jabouille, still ahead of Andretti's, behind the 2 Ferraris, but he's nowhere near Eddie Cheever. This could be very bad news for Ronnie Peterson when he rejoins. He was ahead of Cheever. Will he be behind Cheever? Beltoir has brought himself into this. And where does Peterson rejoin? Peterson's in a good position, actually. I think he can probably go and challenge Mario Andretti for third. As he passes Gurney, I don't think it's looking very good for... I don't think it's looking very good at all for Ferrari, who should have won last year but did not. As Gurney pits, yeah, Gurney pits again, so it's definitely a bit of a problem for, and that was a boosting problem for Peterson, and it's bad news for both McLarens because they lost DRS. At present, the fastest lap is held by Patrick Depailler. And Cheever on the boost, running away from Peterson. I think Peterson's going to have to take a view here and say, yeah, we're going to have to boost after these guys and we've got to get DRS. He's not going to get it. He does get it. Andretti doesn't get it off the back of Jabouille. So bad news for one of the McLarens. Good news for the other. Peterson really now the designated team leader for the first time. But out front, Jarry leads comfortably from Mario Andretti, who was the favourite before the race. Carlos Reutemann in third. Eddie Cheever fourth. Jean-Pierre Beltoir fifth. And Ronnie Peterson sixth. I suspect that will be the top 6 come the flag. The order, however, will be a bit different, I think. Beltoir's got the boost, but he hasn't got the tyres. And you got Andretti, who hasn't got the boost or tyres, really. And then in the best position is probably Jarry or Reutemann. It's whether who's going to end up in third, I think. As Andretti trying to challenge Patrick Depailler. So Cheever is monstrously quick. There's no denying it that Arrows is a fantastically fast machine. And if he's got the offset on the tyres compared to Beltois... Oh, mistake from Peter. He doesn't get into DRS of Cheever, so that's helping Cheever even more. Cheever might... It's one would want to give Eddie Cheever driver of the day, but the performance of the top three has been fantastic. I don't know where it went wrong for Tapai, but he was really quite exceptional earlier in the race. As I think Rindt has now come in, and Rindt might be able to nab the final point off Alessandro Nannini, which I think would be a great shame, because I think Nannini's driven well enough to deserve, and I don't really think Rindt's done anything noteworthy at all today, as Andretti gets passed by Jabouille. Mario Andretti and Carlos Reutemann. They can't do anything. This is what Peterson did last season, and it's because Jarry ran the longest in the first stint, I think, is probably the reason. But that was a very strange race so far. With 10 laps to go. I mean, I don't really know what Cheever is checking out, and he's exceptionally quick. And Andretti is not quick anymore, and he's now fallen behind Nannini. I think doing a two-stop is a pretty significant failing on the part of Williams, but that's just something that they can take advice on in future, because the car fundamentally is very fast. I think we saw enough of that in the early part of the race to know that they do have a very quick package underneath them. Third on the grid for Rosberg, sixth for Mansell. I think we know that they do have a very quick package underneath them. I mean, basically, I think the decision that Peterson's going to make now is he's got to go after Cheever. Because if he can go after Cheever, there is the possibility of getting Andretti. And I think that's quite an appealing viewpoint. If you are able to get onto the podium. As Nannini is shunted out of the way at the back. I think is feeling that he's maybe able to go for 7th place today. Going to pass Jochen Rindt. And Depay's got some boost, but Andretti's got more. I think 7th is probably the best you can get, unless the tyres really fall off. And I do suspect that Jean-Pierre Beltois' final stint of 19 laps is too long. And I think that final stint will cost him in the last few laps. It's whether or not he has the requisite quantity of boost left over to be able to make that work. As Rindt now passes Jabouille. Jabouille has more boost, so I wouldn't be too concerned if I was Rindt. Andretti seems to just not be able to... Michael Andretti, this is, not be able to do anything. Lotus are under threat from Peterson and Cheever, as here comes Cheever to close up to the back of Ronnie Peterson, as McLaren now start to struggle with their tyre temperatures. As the lap times look, I'm not convinced. I think Reutemann is, and I think Andretti's been sacrificed, or Reutemann's been sacrificed. They're trying to help one of the cars to ensure they definitely get a podium. I think it's a smart bit of management from Lotus. I think they're doing the right thing there. As Peterson once again goes ahead of Cheever, but they're not really making the time fast enough. I think 5th place is something that would go down pretty well with... I wonder if Andretti could get 6th here, because Beltoir's got a lot of boost that he's not using, and it's going to be unfortunate because he's got tyres that are really going to cause him problems on the last lap. He really does have some issues with the tyres. So, Jarier, Reutemann, Andretti, every single driver who has driven for Lotus will be on this roster. And I think that even though it's a Ligier, not a Lotus on the top step, I think that the outfit can be very, very happy with this achievement, to be honest. It's the same sort of thing that happened in Monaco in season 13, where Williams were delighted that their reigning champion was on the podium with their 2 current drivers. Well, in that case, Fernando Alonso, Cedar Aslan, and Jose Maria Lopez. So Williams have made a mistake on strategy, which is a shame because their car's fundamentally quick. Ferrari made a mistake on strategy. I think RWB did as well because they had absolutely sod all pace. Cheever's up to 3rd now. He's not going to hold on to it, I don't think. Out of the final corner, and it's going to be Peterson who nabs it from Cheever on the run to the line. Beltoir will hold on to 6th. Andretti will take 7th. Depay holds 8th ahead of Jabouille. And Rindt does beat Andretti. Does beat Nannini for the final point. But Brabham 11th and 12th, strong showing. Baldi will come across the line 30th. A torrid race for Jody Scheckter in 14th. Ickx and Stommelen. The fastest lap goes to Jackie Ickx. Finishing 16th and 17th. And then 17th and 18th for the 2 Ferraris of Gurney and Eamon, and at the back it was the Williamses, but I think the Williamses' problem was their strategy, which is very interesting. But what a start to the season that has been. Certainly a very, very interesting start to the season. Jarier, Reutemann, Peterson, Cheever, Andretti, Beltoir, other Andretti, Michael, Depailler, Jabouille, Rindt, Nannini, Pache, Baldi, Scheckter, Ickx, Stommelen, Gurney, Eamon, Mansell, and Rosberg. And in the Constructors' Championship, which I'm sure everybody wants to know as well, the situation is as follows. 28 points for Lotus, so they did not win the race, but they have 28 points and lead the Constructors' Championship. 27 for Ligier, 21 for McLaren, 12 for Arrows, 9 for Aston Martin, 4 for Tyrrell, 0 for Brabham, 0 for RWB, 0 for Ferrari, and 0 for Williams. Concludes the season opener of this season, the 26th season of the AIC. Amidst some bad news before the race, but I think overall we had rather a nice motor race to make up for it. And of course, Jean-Pierre Jarier and Ligier's first win as a partnership. What an incredible thing to see, but there's a long way to go this season. And hopefully you'll be able to join us next time out in Sakir for the AIC in 1 week's time, or tomorrow in Yas Marina the AIF Star Championship. But until then, it's